They had come. All right, so let's talk about Lab 7 real quick. I think we can get it all done relatively quickly. If I can get all my windows working with me. So Lab 7, we're going to do what we always do. We're going to start idle. We're going to get our file going. So our new file with a name, with everybody's name and what assignment it is in it. So if we're going through this, we're going to modify some existing code. So the following code is a function that takes the phrase stored in a variable P and counts the total number of alphabetic characters and determines the number of characters that are the letter E. So it's going to look for all the E's. It's going to give us how many times it happens, which is the frequency and the percentage of the string. So since this function is given to you, we can copy and paste it into our code. Copy paste is your friend. Feel free to use it. That does mean that we are going to probably have to do some cleaning up. So be aware that that happens. So it's going to be a function. P is going to be this really long string. The reason it has 3 quotes around it instead of 2 is because I do want the quotation marks to be included as part of my data set. So you use 3 quotes. That way the quotes inside the string don't mess up your start and stopping point. We are giving it a list of lower characters and we're giving it a list of upper characters because it's going to have to compare the two. All right. Another way we could have done it is we could have forced every character in the original string to be lowercase using that to lower that we have done in the past, right? Or the dot lower function. But in this case, we're just going to give it 2 strings. It's going to keep up with the number of these. It's going to keep up with the total number of characters for a character in P, which means it's going to go through and check every character in our string, our phrase. We are going to then check if it is in the lower, if the character we're looking at is in the lows list or in the up list. And then we're going to do total characters, add 1 to it. If a character is an E, we're going to add 1 to total of E's, right? If it's not an E, we're not going to do anything. So the first if checks to see if it's actually a letter instead of a piece of punctuation or a number. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then it's going to print out your text contains a total number of characters. Right? So because from here, we all know that we have to have a main to drive this. I'm going to go ahead and create a main and test this one function. And all my main's going to do is called count. And then again, I'm going to have another call main.
Does it matter if you put your main function at the top or the bottom?
Absolutely does not matter. I normally put it at the top because that was the way I was taught to code, but it's a coding style issue.
Mhm.
You can actually absolutely put it in the middle. Most of us that have been programming for a while are going to cringe a lot if you put main in the middle, but it will work. And I have found out this semester grading y'all's projects and labs and assignments that if you put 3 main methods with 3 calls to main in it, Python will let that run too. Don't have any idea why. It shouldn't, but it does.
Does that violate the don't repeat yourself?
Absolutely. You should never have 3 of the same functions. And you definitely should never have 3 mains. It does weird things though when you have more than 1 main, because it decides which main it's going to run based on the order they're in.
Yeah.
So just be aware, 1 main, you only need 1 main in all of your code, promise. So let's run this real quick. So my text contained 166 alphabetic characters, of which 25 or 15 point a lot of digits percent are E. Right? We did the counting and the math, and I didn't have to. So I did that, and I tested it just to make sure that I copied and pasted correctly. It did. So we're good. I can move on to the next step. I want to modify the above function so that both the phrase to count the characters in and the letter to determine the frequency and percentage of our parameters of the function. In the modification, do not use 1-letter variable names such as P. That was a really bad idea on my part, right? So we're going to change this function. And the next step wants us to rename the above function so that it has a more appropriate name. So I'm probably going to do both of those at the same time because why not? So can you think of a more appropriate name for this function? Anybody? Yeah, this is where your creativity has to come in play. So I'm probably going to just change it to count letters or count a letter. Because it's only counting a single letter, right? So I'm going to pass it in a parameter. I'm going to pass it in a phrase. And I'm going to pass it in the letter. And in this case, all of this is coming out. And P is now going to be equal to the phrase. Right? Right?
Yeah.
And in here, where instead of a character being set hard-coded to E, we're going to let it be set equal to whatever letter is, right? Now, in theory, those 2 changes should have made this work, right? So let's test it and see. So I'm going to change how it's called in main. I'm going to give it a phrase, which oddly enough, I'm going to copy and paste out of over here because AZ is my middle name. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to paste it in here. And then I'm going to put the letter in as E again. It's in single quotes because it is a single character. Characters are in single quotes. Strings are in double quotes. And if I run it, this looks crazy because the way the quote went in there, but it is all one continuous line to the computer. So you definitely need the comma before the E. Or if you want to make it look a little prettier, you can put it up here on this line. And you could put this up here. That make it look a little cleaner for you guys? Yes? No? Maybe? So if I run it now, I should get exactly the same thing I had before because I didn't change anything. Ah, I put an extra equal sign in there, sorry. 166 characters, 25 of them are E. Yeah. All right, be there just a second. Your code went crazy. That happens to us all. It's the reason you see me testing everything. Every time I make a significant change to my code, I run it again just to see if it did what I thought it was going to do. Nobody is ever going to tell you that you tested too much. There is no such thing as testing too much in computer science. There is a such thing as testing too little. All right, so the next thing is we want to refactor the code so it doesn't need both the lows and the ups variables. Instead, it takes the phrase passed in, converts it all to the same case. So you only need an uppercase or a lowercase string of A, B, C's, but not both. So think on that a second while I check the code back here. Yes.
Oh. Paying attention.
Really gross.
Hey, where's that part?
It doesn't want to be graphic.
Can you believe that? Can you believe? It's called having good eyes.
Single quotes.
I was sitting there.
Look at the one you copied. You have the document. See how it starts.
Why did you delete one of
And that-
That wasn't even up there. I don't even know how you got it.
Really?
All right.
He had some random stuff on there.
What is? I keep
You
having-
need those.
Yeah. What
It
is
shouldn't
this?
be in def main though. You've got it on the wrong line. Main doesn't take a parameter.
Oh,
All right, help everybody out. Come on, Bradley, help him out. All right, so if we want to refactor this where we don't need both the ups and the lows, we absolutely can just get rid of one of them. I'm going to get rid of the ups. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take phrase and make it all lowercase. So do P is equal to phrase dot lower. I'm mixing my Java again today, so let me know if I did something wrong. Is that correct? Or is it comes before and then the parentheses, doesn't it? Java.
Python documentation.
We could, or I could just get my two languages straight. Let's run it and see what happens. If it's wrong, it'll give me a compile error, or it should. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't like that. Yeah, I was expecting that error. So we changed it all to lowercase here. So now we don't need this or part of this if statement because we're only checking. Only have to check one of them. So now we've sped up our program. In this case, we're talking nanoseconds, but if it was a bigger program, it could tally up to something important. Still works. Right?
Yep.
All right, so back to our directions. We did that. We modified the if statement. Create a new function that prompts the user for a phrase and the user for a letter and then calls the above function. So we're going to move the call out of main because we're going to have another function to do that. So we're going to create a new function. It does not tell us what we're naming the function. So you get to name your function, right? So I'm going to name my function get input because that makes sense to me because I'm asking the user for something, right? And in here, phrase, oh, I can't spell that, is going to be equal to an input statement. And then letter is going to equal another input statement. And then once I have those, I'm going to call count, right? So now I'm going to do count underscore a letter and put in phrase and letter. And in main, I'm now just going to call get input. Does that sound like a plan? Is that how y'all would have done it? Would have taken longer? Remember, I've been programming longer than all of you have been alive, so I do it a little faster than you do. Run it to make sure it still works. I'm going to enter the phrase. It did not like that. All right. Let's run it again with a shorter phrase. Oh, I know what it is. You don't need the triple quotes, I don't think. What letter we would count in there? Let's count the T's. I see one thing I didn't do. I didn't change my print statement to handle what letter we're doing, so I need to go do that. So there are 11 characters or 11 letters in my string that I put in. 3 of them were T's. That looks correct. The percentage I assume is correct. One of my math majors can do that for me. But I do need to go fix my print statement where it accurately tells me what letter we were counting, right? So let's go do that real quick before we get any further along. So if we go in here into our print statement, have to scroll way on over. And we're going to do quote here. And we're going to take the E part out and put in letter. And then we're going to put a quote around our period. Right? But we also need a comma after letter. That should fix it, but I'm going to test it because I'm a paranoid person. There we go. Right? Everybody good with that? I see one hand, so we're going to take care of that.
You can make some really creative phrases with it.
You can make a lot of creative phrases. Please keep it school appropriate.
Can't believe you wore something like that. The letter. Modify existing code first. Trying to code.
If that doesn't. Yes.
How did you do things so? Because mine's still reading all the things. Oh, this one.
Yep. All right. So does that make, are we all on the same page here? If I wanted to put that long quote in here, I need to take the triple single quotes off of each end because we're just passing in a string. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So moving along. We've done all of step 3 because we already have a main function. We already have a main testing. I did that a lot sooner than the directions did because I like to test things earlier. Again, I'm going to state this because I have a feeling that people don't pay attention to it. Testing frequently saves you a lot of frustration in the long run. Save and run, we did. So now we're on to part 2. Part 2 is called word fun. We're going to write a function that does the following. Based on the function, based on what the function does, choose an appropriate function name. Look, I'm taking the training wheels off and you guys are having to create your own stuff without me telling you how to do it. Look, you're all becoming programmers. So it's going to prompt the user for the phrase. This is a different function. It's not going to be part of your other get input one, right? We're going to prompt the user for a phrase. We're going to display the following items about the phrase. We're going to tell it how long, we're going to have a print statement that's going to tell the user how long the phrase was. It's going to give a lowercase version of the phrase. And it's going to give an uppercase version of the phrase. Because if there's a function to lower everything, there's a function to uppercase everything, right? And then it's going to give us the phrase without any punctuation. Stripping the punctuation out is the hardest part. Because everything else is already a pre-built-in function, right? Length, lower, upper, those are all pre-built. All you have to do is call them, save them into a variable, and then print them back out. So here's an example of what we want the output to look like. And look at there. There is a function already in your notes that tells you how to remove punctuation that you can copy and paste. Don't forget to copy and paste the import line. Right? So you're going to use this function in the function you write. Trust me, it looks weird, but it works. So if I copy this, and I'm going to put it at the very top of my file because I like all of my import statements to be first. Again, that's a style thing. When I learned to program, import statements always were the very first thing you type because it mattered what order everything was in. So we're going to put the import string. We're going to have the function remove punctuation. We're going to add another function of our choice that we're going to name whatever we want to name to print out all the information about the string. Right? So what do we want to call this function? He wants to call it word fun. Is that an appropriate function name? Does that tell me what the function is going to do?
Length.
String.
We could call it that, yeah. How about we just call it string info? Because all it's doing is telling us stuff about the string, right? But for this one in particular, we could call it word fun because that's the name of the section. It's also short to type. So let's do that because manipulation is hard to spell. So we are going to go with word fun this time. Normally, I would tell you that you should use a name that is descriptive of what it's doing. But this one's basically just giving you statistics about the phrase, right? So we're going to call it word fun because it fits with the directions. In here, it has to prompt the user for the phrase. So guess what? I'm going to go find where I prompt the user for the phrase down here and copy it. Then we're going to display the following about the phrase. So we're going to print or something like that. The phrase is, well, whatever the length is, characters long, right? That makes sense? We're then going to have another print line to print out a lowercase version of it. Going to print out an uppercase version of it. I left a comma out right here. And then the last thing we want to do is print it without any punctuation. So that's going to be a little bit harder, right? So it returns the phrase, the function we have. So we're going to call the function and print out the result. We can do it two ways. We can call the function and put it into a variable, or you actually can call the function and the print line. Whichever one makes more sense to you. If you want to do it in a variable, go ahead and do another variable name and equals So. And then you can print. Right? So if I test this now, I got to put something in main to do that. So I'm going to comment this line out because I don't want to fool with it right now. And I want to do, we called it word fun. And run it. Again, this. I don't know. So I have a messed up one. Oh, messed that up. Okay. I used the lower function earlier correctly and did not use it correctly the second time. Why didn't you guys call me out on that? So phrase dot lower, which means that upper is wrong too. So might as well just fix that while I'm here. It's 11 characters long. If you convert it all to lowercase, it takes them all the little letters. You convert it to uppercase, it takes them to all uppercase letters. If you remove the punctuation, it gets rid of the @ symbol. Right? Huh? Huh. Why'd that turn off? Killing me. There we go. These smart boards drive me crazy. Questions? Part 3. We don't have time for, so I'm going to stop here and let you work on that. I will jump in and answer questions about it as we move forward, but it's actually where you go to work with a string. But I've done 2/3 of the lab, and like I said, when I am back in class with you again, I will finish walking you through this, and we will add another video if that's necessary. So